Thank you all for taking some time out of your day to discuss structural inspections with us. We're very excited to be here to teach you a bit about structural inspections and what we do with them. If we haven't met before, my name is Holly. I'm a program manager here at Elrod, and I work on instructional inspections with our team. Then I also have Charlotte here with me today. She's going to help moderate with Rachel and Annie. She's our business development manager. And, as Rachel said, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat. We'll either work them in after some slides or after the presentation. So let's go ahead and dive in. So for those of you who don't know much about Elrod, we have two offices. One's going to be in the Nashville area, which is what we're out of. And then we have another in the Philadelphia area. Our Nashville office has a higher focus on the signage industry, anywhere from directional signs in Florida to architectural elements and billboards across the US. And then, of course, structural inspections, which is a portion of our sign program management division here in the Nashville office. So our agenda for today, we're going to be discussing why you may find yourself in need of a structural inspection, why Elrod really sees the need for them, and then we're going to get into some of the details of what we look for in an inspection, the reasoning behind why we find some of these items in a sign, and then what the outcome of an inspection is. So our team likes to use the term buffet for some of the services we offer, as we do have a wide range of capabilities to assist sign companies in their day-to-day needs. And one of those items is our structural inspection assistance. But what exactly is a structural inspection? And what's the point behind doing this rather than a standard survey? Well, I'm glad you asked. So the next two slides, we will go into some reasons that may be a cause or need for an inspection. We understand that as a sign company, you're very capable of completing a survey, but we have found that by working alongside you, we can go into a bit more detail than your standard survey to really evaluate and analyze the current standing structure you plan on using and repurposing. Think of it as just adding another layer to your current surveys you perform. So let's talk about recent storm changes. Now, most signs that are not in a coastal region are designed to a wind speed of 115 miles per hour or lower, which is covered if a moderate tornado comes through. She said the screen's not sharing.
Hey, Eric and Mark, can y'all see the screen? Because I can see it on my end. It's sharing on my end. Annie, Eric, Mark, if you guys can't see us, let us know. Okay, I think we're going to proceed. Oh, we're going to proceed. You guys let us know if you can't see it, but I can see it. Okay, keep on.
Yeah, if not, I can send this out after too. That way you'll have it as a reference. But so storm patterns. Most signs that are not in a coastal region, like I said, are designed to a wind speed of 115 miles per hour or lower, which is covered if a moderate tornado comes through. So like a EF0 to an EF1. If you have an EF2 or above, those wind speeds can get as high or higher than 365 miles per hour, with I think 318 miles per hour being the highest on the tornado intensity scale. It's unreasonable to design all signs on the unlikely chance that this could happen. We don't want to over-engineer anything if we don't need to. But if you regularly check on your welds, your sign that was installed designed to a 90 mile per hour wind speed load in the 80s and 90s may stand a better chance to weather the storm. You can see, hopefully you can see the image on the screen that has the traditional tornado alley. And then it's increased and they've added the Dixie Alley, which now covers most of that Mid-South area. And I'm sure we've all seen our recent share of tornado warning and watches from the weather alerts this season. And I bet we haven't seen the last of them, which is why we wanted to go over inspections today. So a little bit of history and research that we've done is when you compare the number of strong tornadoes from 1984 to 2003 to the 20-year period of 2004 to 2023, southeastern states account for 6 of the top 10 that had increases in strong tornadoes over that period. So you can see Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, Kentucky, and Tennessee have all increased with their storms with an EF2 and higher. So I did a little research and I looked at Tennessee specifically to pull data just to give you all a bit more perspective. We had over 500 events in Tennessee that were classified as a tornado from 2000 to 2024. But with 193 of those events were reported from 2020 to 2024. So we had 307 over a 20-year period, but almost 200 within a 4-year period. And 48 of those were EF2 or higher. So just with that, I mean, you can see the increase of storms is rapidly rising, and I'm sure it will continue to change as well. And I can send out after the presentation the websites that I use, because you can get specific down to the county you're in and the state as well. Another reason you might want to get a structural inspection completed is to reuse an existing sign. A lot of the time our clients are going to reach out. They just purchased a new location. They're doing a conversion and they have a lot of signs that are already on the lots that we can utilize, which is great. It's going to save money. You're environmentally friendly. You're repurposing an existing structure, but we look at what the condition of that structure really is in. We think about liability. The last company to work on a structure assumes the liability of it. So we want to make sure that you have an insurance per se, that this structure is to current code and it's up to par. As well as signs are really close to public areas. As you can see, the one on the screen is close to a hotel, parking lots. We want to make sure that, you know, what we're doing is going to be safe for the public. Which gives us our point. So why would we want to invest in an inspection? We just went over the increase of storm patterns, existing structures that a lot of us use daily, public safety. And we've all heard of sign failures. Some have cost people their lives, and we want to help prevent those if possible. You and your client spend a large sum on signs. So anything that we can do to help prolong the life of it, we should definitely try. So going in a little more in depth, storms didn't cause all of these failures that you can see. This one here in that top corner, that was a storm, but one of our clients that we do inspections for is still standing tall. We see that the average lifespan of a sign can be anywhere, and this is estimated about 20 to 25 years, but if we can add 5 to 10 additional years to that sign, it could really help alleviate some of the issues for you and your clients. These are some of the main reasons we see a need for inspections. And, you know, of course, why we get so pumped to speak about them, it's truly a good day at work when we get to focus on structural inspection reports. So let's get into some of the weeds of what an inspection involves and some of the details we look at. So one item that helps with any inspection is consistency, a ton of details for your crew to have when they're out in the field. So when first starting an inspection, we put together a detailed scope of work, images, callouts, and forms for your crew to use and fill in. We understand that the guys on site could be anywhere from 50 to 100 feet or more in the air. So we want to be sure that they have something simple and safe while getting all the information that we need. Standardization can also take place. If you have a client or a program and they have a consistent sign family, we can standardize inspection forms, and then crews and people out on site will really become accustomed to filling these out. So an inspection packet, it's usually about, gosh, it can range anywhere from 10 pages to 15, depending on how tall the sign is and how many splice welds there are. It includes a detailed list of scope. Areas for the crew to gather all the details we'll need for the analysis of the structure. So your pipe thicknesses, dimensions, the circumference, even a list of photos that we would prefer to have. And we request that they're labeled so we can tell what we're looking at when we get them back. Plus, any areas for the crew to make notes. I mean, we include it all. We're an engineering firm, so we really enjoy getting tons of information. You can't overwhelm us with too many photos or notes. But this is just the beginning stages of when we research the sign, we create these forms and we really dig into what information we're going to need to perform an analysis to give you the best recommendation we can. So who is involved in a structural inspection? Well, it takes a team. We utilize a certified welding inspection company, KTA. They're on site with the sign company to help test the welds and gauge the pipe thickness. You yourself, the sign company, will be there. You are a vital part to make sure we have a lift, someone there on the sign, and we're all working together to gather the best data possible for the engineering review after the inspection takes place. Now, working with a large team like this does take some coordinating, but once you have an inspection approved, we can easily get a CWI tech scheduled to meet your crew on site. KTA has partnered with us for years. They're very familiar with what we look for and can help crews make sure that we get all the data that we need. We also check in with the crews while they're on site. That way, if there's any centerline cracks or things that need to be addressed while you're there, we can take care of those. So it's also good to have a certified welder on site. It can be beneficial when inspecting an unknown sign that may have some issues with it, because you just never know what you're going to see. I'm sure you guys have some stories to tell also of what you've seen on site. So what do we look for in an inspection? We inspect the sign from the top of the cabinet to the bottom of the pipe. We can even get an excavation team out there to dig around the base of the pole and the foundation to confirm there's no corroding near or beneath grade on the pole. We can inspect the interior LEDs or external light fixtures, because while we're there and while you all are on site, we want to gather all the information we can so that way you and your client can recommend and repair everything that needs to be done. If a light's out, we can get that fixed. So it's not just about the structural stuff. We want to take care of the non-structural stuff as well. We want to help preserve the brand image. So let's go ahead and get into what we look at for each specific location on the sign and some of the details behind it. So looking at a cabinet, the interior of the cabinet, we want to make sure that there's no significant moisture entering the cabinet, limited rust, paint peeling. We want to make sure the internal members are staying how they should, of course, and we also want to avoid any open holes in the top of the cabinet or areas that have rusted completely through. As you can see in that first photo in the top of the cabinet, it's almost gone right there. You can see the sunlight coming through, which is not good. So we do see a lot of rust, paint peeling, and swollen members in the coastal regions. The protective coatings of primer and paint, even though they are on the interior of the sign, can really help protect the steel tubes from moisture and rust and help your sign last longer. Some signs we suggest a protective coating to be applied after an inspection. We scrape the metal back down to bare, and then the coating is applied to aid further rust prevention and to help that sign. While we're in the interior of the cabinet, we can also look at electrical items. We want to make sure that everything is UL compliant and there's no hot wires that aren't capped off. Water can also be an issue when they get into sign cabinets. It can create rust, paint peeling. If it freezes in a tube, then that tube can swell. If a tube is swollen, there can be recommendations for adding some weep holes or additional angles or support that may be needed to confirm that those members don't fall. Also in coastal regions with flex faces, mold and mildew can grow. You can see that one in the bottom corner, how the mold's on the cabinet and on the faces. Just taking that extra time to clean those and preserving them a little bit longer. You know, signs, sometimes we just need to give them some TLC. So light fixtures. Funny enough, a falling light arm actually started our national inspection program, one of them. And thankfully, it fell at night and it landed in a parking lot. It's actually sitting outside my desk right now. And man, y'all, those things can be heavy. So we definitely don't want them to fall on any cars or, people. So some signs still use external light fixtures. You have uplighting, downlighting, depending on codes, but we want to make sure that the light arms stay where they need to and not in the parking lot. When inspecting light arms, we would look at their mounting conditions, welds, plates, bolts, however they're going to be mounted to that cabinet. And then while crews are there and they're already up in the air, we want to make sure that the fixtures are illuminating, that they're not cracked. We want to add value to the inspection, and gathering that information for a light outage will be a benefit to you and your client. Welds. Welds are essential to the integrity of the sign structure, and a good weld can be the difference between a sign failure and it standing through the storm. When a CWI crew is on site with the sign company, they're there to review the welds. The sign crew would remove the paint from the structure, and then the CWI can test the welds for porosity to make sure it's the correct thickness that it needs to be, if there are any cracks, any visual defects that they can spot. They use a magnetic particle testing equipment and ultrasonic testing equipment. Then they can also visually inspect it with or without the paint removal. It's easier, I think, once the paint is removed to actually see the weld. Some of them, if you look at these photos, if the weld's very poor, you can tell with the paint on, of course. And so there are multiple welds that would inspect in a multi-stage structure. The mounting plate weld, if there is one, we want to make sure that that welds a full 100% around the circumference of the sign and the plates. We would inspect all the splice welds, make sure that they reach a minimum thickness for the weld. The pipes aren't there moving back and forth if they have a high frequency. And then we would also check all the slot welds, make sure that they're tied into the compression ring. We want to make sure that there is a compression ring if there's a multi-stage sign. We had one recently that we were uncertain if there is, so verifying it, making sure we take the appropriate action and the repairs as necessary. If we have slot welds, we want to make sure that the slot welds are filled with weld and not silicone. We want them to be watertight. We don't want moisture or water to get into those pipes. And we really do a thorough inspection of the sign along with you all. We want to make sure that the welds are going to last, that they're not going to falter anytime soon. Because over time, if they deteriorate, we can catch that before anything bad happens. As you can see in these photos also, items are labeled. So you have the mounting plate weld at the 0 degree location, the 270. So labeling photos is very important for us, because when the photos are sent back to us to review, pipe stages can start to look the same when you get multiple photos, especially if it has 2 or 3 stages. So labeling helps a lot to make sure that we know what we're looking at and we haven't looked at it before. Bolts, anchor bolts, mounting bolts, light arm bolts, bolts inside the cabinet. There's a lot of bolts in one sign. And so we want to make sure that all the bolts first are there and that they're threaded correctly. They're not rusting out too bad. With that photo that you can see under the label of bolts, it shows anchor bolts that don't even make it past that second nut there. And it needs some grout to fill under the pole. Anchor bolts need to penetrate, we think, at least 2 threads just to make sure it's in there. And then engineering specifics, if you have previous drawings, most of the time we call out the bolt type. We want to make sure that those are being followed as well to help with the integrity and the design of that sign per your engineering. And then next, the base of the pole. The base of the pole, it can also be inspected. Sometimes we excavate them out just to make sure that there's no pitting, possibly due to galvanic corrosion from soil interaction. If there's a sprinkler in and around that area, the base of the pole, it can create some pitting, and if that's not stopped, we'll see section loss and weakening the pole. we want to, weed eaters, we make sure that there's a weed eater guard around, anything that's going to take chunks out of that sign to weaken it, we don't want to see. So now, after we inspect the sign from top to bottom, let's look at what comes next. So this slide shows an example of what KTA will send back to your engineer. It goes over the summary of what they inspected while they were on site. It kind of goes into the details, and then you'll also see that their testing data is here as well, and if things were acceptable or rejected, in the notes along with it. So the summary from the CWI, it really puts, I guess, basically their testing data and other information into just a more readable format for us and your client. This would be sent to you as well as part of that final package. And then the other 2 pages, these come along with it. They have the survey forms as well that they put their data in also. So we utilize these reports to help create our structural report and analysis, which is on this slide. So the first part of this page goes into the detail of the sign description, history if we have it, how many stages, how many splices, and then you get more into the data of what we found within the items inspected, and then the repair and inspection recommendations, evaluation from the engineer as well. The report is going to be signed and sealed by one of our licensed engineers, and it just adds that extra layer of confidence into this report. So the structural analysis is a part of the inspection, but I wanted to touch a bit more and explain what that truly is. And when you're building a new sign and getting engineering, your engineer will create calculations that determine the size of the foundation, your pole size, all those essential details to build your sign per current code. Then if you're reusing an existing sign that's already been designed, we have to analyze what's currently there to existing code. So it's making sure we have all that information to analyze your sign properly. So our engineer team will take the dimensions, the pipe thickness, and create that structural analysis that looks at the frequency of the structure to determine if it's overstressed, which can play a significant factor in welds if it is overstressed, or if it meets current code. Even though if a sign is grandfathered in, it can still be overstressed, and action can be taken to help alleviate that additional stress on the pipes and welds. So the process in general, of course, you would start with a proposal, the initial request to the team, and then once that's accepted, it goes into scheduling. But overall, this process could take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the sign company's schedule as well, because we would definitely need the sign company out there, a lift, depending on how tall the sign is, and then getting KTA out there as well. So overall, it can take a couple of weeks from the start to the finish, and then just for fun, you never know what you're going to find out there. So it's always good to have an inspection. Your client will appreciate it. Also, that first photo, you can see the pipe had a secondary cabinet installed. So they just cut it in half, lifted it up, added their own pipe and plates to it, and added the sign. And then the red one, Rob actually took that picture when he was out and about. That has since been fixed. But I mean, this is definitely something that could end up, I don't know, on those damn sign guys, that Facebook page, adding that in. But just helping add that extra additional inspection for your client so they know what they have out there. And then in the grand scheme of things, we are here to support you all. This is one additional item that we offer. If you all have, any other questions or anything, we can answer those at that time. We're also going to be at Sign Connection in July. So we'll be more than happy to talk to you further if you guys have some signs in mind or specific sites that you all have questions about. And that's all I have. So thank you all for your time today. Were there any questions in